In this video, I'll take a look at the noatikl design file that's at the heart of the St Ives Song and break it down to show how noatikl's doing what it's doing and explain the techniques being used. This piece is generated entirely by noatikl in the standalone version. The instruments are housed in Logic 8 and the two programs are linked by MIDI sync through MIDI pipe. Now if I move to the Logic Arrange page first, this should give you an idea of the basic structure of the piece. And as you can see, it's quite a spare arrangement. There's just vocals, piano, strings, a guitar and some ambiences. And as you can see on the channel strips, I'm using Contact Sampler, Logic's own EXS sampler, a Logic plugin synth and absynth. The guitar is coming in from an external synth, so it has two tracks, one to send MIDI out to the synth and one to bring the audio back into Logic's mixer. If you've heard the piece, then you'll know it's a naive little song with quite a floating, dreamlike feel to it. So it probably doesn't sound like it's using 16 noatikl voices on 7 MIDI channels to achieve that. Before I get into the details of the piece, I should just say a few words about the musical structure, because that really is simple. The piece uses a whole tone scale. Now originally this was just for technical reasons, because it moves potential discords when you're dealing with melodic samples. So in this piece I don't have to worry about harmonisation rules, because every available note optional will work pretty much okay with every other. However, this also means that there's no melodic journey or direction for the piece to go in. Whole tone pieces tend just to float around, and that actually gives the piece its rather dreamy, watery kind of feel. Back in the basics view, the key voices in the piece are the first two, which are the vocal tracks. To see how they work, I need to show you the patch in Contact I'm using. If we look at the sample mapping, you can see that there are complementary sets of samples layered across an octave each. Which sample is triggered depends obviously on the note played, but most importantly it also depends on the note velocity. Low velocities trigger the bottom row of samples, mid ones the mid row, and large velocities trigger the high row. Back in noatikl, the first voice here triggers a sample in the first octave using a rhythmic voice rule. The second voice triggers a response sample to the second octave about one beat later using a following voice. And as you can see, it's set up to follow that first voice after a beat plus up to about 10 ticks, because that variation gives a more human feel to things. If I show you the velocity envelopes for these voices, you can see they're unrestrained, so all velocities are equally possible. You do that by setting the start value of the velocity and velocity change to minimum, but maximise the change ranges. Next down in the main view are the principal piano voices. Noatikl voices are monophonic, so if you want chords, you need to add one line for each note you want in a chord. There are 3 chances for chords using these 3 voices, each of which has a different range. The second piano line here follows the first using a 50% strategy, so you vary between producing dyad and triad chords. Next along are the low string chords, and again it's the same trick. One voice leads, second follows at slightly less than 100% frequency, so the result is a changing density of chording. Although there is only one scale rule, there are several rhythm rules involved, so each instrument has a different playing style. The guitar also has its own next note rule as well, to exclude the possibility of it playing the same notes consecutively. The first ambient track down here is simply the low rumble that runs throughout the piece. It's there because, well, for me at least, it suggested the presence of the sea without being over-literal. And the companion voice is an absynth patch pitched right up in the upper range, and that was intended to add some occasional colour and interest. The final 2 pairs of voices are, in my view, the glue that holds the piece together. The first 2 voices here echo on the piano the notes selected for use in the vocal lines. However, because they've got no delay added, they play immediately that the note is selected by the noatikl engine, meaning that these following voices actually sound as if they're leading the voice in the way a good accompanist might. And it's this aural illusion that I think makes the piece actually sound like a song. The last 2 voices do something similar, but they cut in after the vocal, and the idea was to give a kind of shimmer or backsheen effect. So that's how this piece is put together. What I'll do now is switch over so you can see Logic and noatikl on the same screen. I'll mute everything here on the mixer and then just cue in each voice set one by one so that you can hear them come in and hear what each one's doing.